Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome back to Blissfully Bloom. I am super excited for today's episode because I have a guest come on the show. Her name is Elle Maple, and we have met through Instagram. She lives all the way in the UK, and I honestly feel like I have found my twin soul flame, my soul sister across the country and across the world. We connected pretty early on during my beginning phases of coaching, and I really feel like our stories are so alike and we just align in just so many ways. And I'm so grateful for meeting her virtually, but maybe one day she'll come visit me in Colorado or vice versa. I visit her in the UK. I really wanted her to come on the show to speak about authenticity, finding your true self, and really aligning yourself with who you are and not being afraid to be who you are, who you truly are. And we talk about on this episode how there can be a lot of blockages that are stopping us or preventing us from actually feeling confident enough or feeling safe enough to be ourselves and to fully express ourselves. So we dive into that today, and I'm just so excited to have her on the show. Now, Ellie is a mindset and business coach based in the UK who is passionate about helping other entrepreneurs to truly step into their power, build their confidence, and help them up level their business by being their complete, authentic self. She is 22 years old and started her own mindset journey after dropping out of university at 19. She is now a student studying psychology with counseling and uses her platform to help others push past holding themselves back and start living fully for themselves. Some questions that I will be asking Ellie today are: what is one thing you wish you knew when you started this personal development journey? How can we know when we are living our lives as our truest selves? What are some blocks that may be stopping someone from being true to themselves? What would you tell a woman who doesn't feel safe to be themselves? And we also dive into perfectionism and anxiety and how that plays a role in being our true selves. And so much more. So if this sounds like your cup of tea, then hold up, wait a minute, because this is a amazing, literally an amazing episode for you. And I just adore Ellie so much. She is such a sweetheart, and I loved having her on the show. It was so much fun. Hello, Ellie. Welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here.
Now, my first question on that I usually ask all of my guests is, what is one powerful lesson you have learned that has completely changed your life?
Okay, so a couple years ago, I went through therapy for a couple years, and I actually wrote down all the life lessons that I learned throughout. And I don't know why, but
Wow.
I have come back to that list time and time again. And the one lesson that has completely changed my life was probably the first one I learned, which was I am in control of my life and I am not responsible for anybody else. And
Mm.
growing up, I come from quite a controlling household. So my parents did absolutely the best they could, but they they had high expectations and you know, they were more on the controlling side. And it took me a long time to learn that I can live my life for me and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not responsible for making them happy and pleasing them. And so, yeah, being told you have control was the biggest life lesson I could ever learn. And I think everything has just stemmed from that first lesson. So, yeah, I think that is
Yes.
such a powerful lesson that people can learn is that you are in control of your life, you know? it's so easy to live for other people and try to please other people all the time, and even in the little things in what you choose to do and things like that, sometimes it can just stem from wanting to please others, or even what is socially expected from people. And
Mm-hmm.
stepping away from that is incredibly scary and it can disappoint people, but learning that you are in control and that's all that matters. Yeah, that was a powerful one for me. Yeah.
Yes, yes. It almost kind of reminds me too, is if you start letting go of those tendencies to please others, then I feel like you really do step back into your authenticity, right? Because then you're making choices for yourself and you're actually doing what's true for you. And that is what we're talking about today. So that goes like hand in hand. So I
Yeah, actually,
absolutely love that.
yeah, I never thought of how well that actually goes hand in hand, but it's so true that truly stepping into your authenticity starts with realizing that you are the one in control and you are responsible for you and only you, you know? So
Yes.
definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that lesson. And may even, kind of spark a light in some people that they may not have realized that yet. So
I
thank you
hope
so
so.
much
I hope
for
so.
sharing that. I would love for you to share a bit about your own personal development journey.
Okay. So this has been a long ride getting to this point, I'm not gonna lie. And I think for me, I think some people naturally fall into it, some people it starts slowly. For me, it was a major life change that kind of catapulted everything. So when I was 19, I decided to drop out of university, and this triggered a lot of things around me and a lot of
Oh,
reactions, and that 100% was the start, and I did not realize it at the time, but looking back, that is the point where everything shifted, everything changed, and that was when I started making decisions for myself and actually what do I want. I think actually my curiosity to understand other people massively moved me into learning about myself. I really wanted to understand my relationship with my partner. I wanted to understand my relationship with my mum. And that is actually why I started therapy and ended up learning so much about myself. But and
wow.
that is when I think around this time I found business as well, and how mindset plays a massive role into that. And all these things kind of came together. Yeah, I learned a lot of lessons, and that's when I started reading the books and taking the courses and just fully learning about self-development. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's been a bit of a wild journey. And actually now I'm back studying at university. I'm studying psychology with counseling. So it's like a full circle moment of
Wow.
that moment of dropping out started the path of where exactly I was supposed to go, and as well as being my personal growth development journeys. So yeah, it's a
Hmm.
pretty wild one, to be honest. I left out all
Yeah.
the details, but yeah, it's a pretty wild long journey that got me here.
I love it. I love it. And I do love how, you may have thought like, oh, going to the university at that time was right for you. But then did you feel something that just wasn't right during that time?
So in the UK, you go to school, you do well at school, and then you go to do A levels, and then if you do well at your A levels, you're pushed to go to university, and that's kind of the natural progression for most people over here. And I just wasn't totally sure of what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do as a career at that point, so I was a bit like, I don't really know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I fell in love with the university before I knew what course I wanted to do, so I knew where I
Mm.
was going. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I actually ended up doing English language because I was really good at it at school, and that was something that I thought could give me plenty of options afterwards. But my first year was really tough, really, really tough. I was not passionate about the subject enough. The whole experience massively triggered my anxiety. So I was like locking myself in my room, crying every night. I was miserable. And
Oh.
that summer, I actually, so I I saved up all year, and that summer I went traveling around Europe for 7 weeks, which was an incredible
Wow.
experience. And then I came back and I was like, right, we're going to smash university, year 2, let's go. And I worked so hard in the first 6 weeks. I was in the library hours on end. I failed an assessment. I failed an essay for something so minor, and it sounds so stupid, but I was sat with my uni mates and I was like, oh, I could just drop out. And then I was like, wait, I could drop out. And it wasn't just this, this failure that happened, but it triggered the questioning of, okay, why am I actually doing this? What am I doing this for? And that's when I realized that actually I didn't want to do it. I didn't want the degree. I didn't want that 9 to 5 afterwards that the degree would have given me. I was like, no, this is not the path for me. This is not what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to be doing something else. And I think it was like within 3 weeks I was officially dropped out. Like,
Wow.
yeah, it was quick.
Oh my goodness. Good for you, girl, for just stepping into that and just being like, you know what? No. I think I do really resonate with that story of yours as well, because I was going to school for education,
Yeah.
and then I went through the whole thing until I was a student teacher, and then even went and was a teacher after that. And
Really?
I was like lying to myself
Yeah.
and pretending like I really did want to do this, but like deep down inside, I knew that there was something else like coaching. And then
Yeah.
I finally found coaching. But I think what I think is so interesting too is asking that powerful question, like, am I doing this for me? Or am I
Yeah.
doing this for someone else?
That was it. I was like, why am I doing this? And it was because it was the easy route. It was what was expected of me. And yeah, I was the high achiever child. Like, I was supposed to be going to university and supposed to be getting the degree, and that's what was
Mhm.
expected. And I realized that actually I just didn't want to do it. I couldn't sit through another year and a half of it. I couldn't put
Mhm.
myself in more debt because of what other people wanted. I had no idea what I was supposed to go and do, but I just I think it was the first time I truly listened into my intuition, and I was like,
Mhm.
this is not the right thing for me. And yeah, that was it. Dropped out.
Yes. It's such a empowering thing to start listening to that
Yeah.
voice of truth. So, for those listeners who are maybe wanting to change some things in their lives, they're curious about this personal development world, what would you tell them when they're first starting out?
Okay. Oh, that's a good question. Okay. So they're wanting to make change. Okay. So I would say, first of all, why do you feel stuck? Where in your life is the stuckness, and what is it that you actually want to change? And that important question of why. Who are you currently living your life for? And what is your dream, absolute dream life? And I love this question. I'm a daydreamer. I love to visualize. I love to think of
Yes.
the absolute craziest thing that I could do. And I don't think enough people allow themselves to do that. They don't
Mhm.
allow themselves to sit, to dream, and think, oh my God, that life is flipping incredible, and then go and create it for themselves. I think it's very easy to sit and go, well, that's not actually realistic for me. So, it's just a dream, or if I win the lottery. And it makes me so sad. It's like, ugh, but you could be living like a part of that reality, and sit, visualize, what do you want? Who are you currently living your life for? What would your life be if you were living it for yourself? I think that is the biggest place to start. And then
Yeah.
from there, you can create the path, the plan, the figuring out, and you learn so much along the way. I think so many people are like, oh, mindset, I need to get it all sorted before I start. No, because you're going to learn so much more than you even think you're going to learn. So just
Yes.
start. That's probably one of the biggest things I've learned as well. Start before you're ready. You're never going to be ready, and you're going to learn so much along the way. So just
Mhm.
do it. Just do it.
Yes. And I feel like too, whenever I was starting, I was getting so overwhelmed by just the amount of knowledge in
Mhm.
the personal development world there is.
Yeah.
But then I was also just kind of ignoring the fact that I also have answers within myself. Like I have all of the answers already within that I want, right?
Yeah.
And you don't need a book to tell you what you want.
Yes. When I first dropped out of uni and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. Like, I just wanted somebody so badly to sit me down and go, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you're going to go do. And maybe that was because that's what I was used to for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually sit and question yourself, you realize how many answers you actually have within inside yourself. And I think maybe people don't like to have that honest conversation with themselves
Mm-hmm.
because it can be scary what your answers actually are. But yeah, it is about having that honest conversation with yourself, and you will realize how much you actually already know and how much you already have within yourself. 100%
Mm-hmm.
agree with you.
Absolutely. And now, how can we know when we are living our lives as our truest selves?
Mhm. Yeah, I think this goes back to what we're already saying of ask yourself, what is your dream life? What reality do you want to create for yourself? What would be living life for yourself be like? And if you're not living that, I think a really important question is, who are you living it for? Your current
Mm.
life setup, who is it actually for? Is it for yourself, or is it to please your parents, or to, help your partner, or who else around you is your life set up for? I think this is still a work in progress for like me, and I think it will be for years to come. And but I think when you know you are truly living as your true self is when you're listening to your intuition. What is happiness, and what is, so many people like are trying to achieve happiness. Is something that's along the way. I think your truest self is when you are feeling 100% comfortable being you. You are listening to your intuition. You are comfortable sharing your thoughts, your opinions, your just being you. When you're sat with like your best friend and you're 100% being yourself, no matter how weird it is, right? You just know that person
Yes.
you. That is your truest self. Like for me, I feel so different around different people because I know I'm not being my true self. I know I'm holding back. But I have those people
Mm.
in my life where I'm sat with them and I'm like, I'm just being me right now. And that is when you're being your truest self. So it's about adopting those traits, those qualities, that behavior that you are as that person and bringing it into your everyday life because that is your true self. So how can you be your true
Yes.
self in everything else that you are doing?
Right. Oh my gosh. I just got a thought of whenever you were telling
Mhm.
about how you are with your best friend. I think of whenever I reunite with my sisters and literally like just the weird in
Yes.
us come out. We're like, hello.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Like
Yes, like
with my best friend, nobody else will understand a conversation ever. We could just make noises and we get each other. So
yes. It's just like that eye connection energy. If
yes,
you've been with
exactly.
somebody since you were born
Yeah.
and they've literally grown up with you, I think it's a little bit, I feel like you may feel a bit more safe to
Mhm.
express your fullest self. And that's why with
Yeah.
family it's so easy because
Yeah.
you are so close. I mean, not everyone is close, but
Mhm.
most of the time those are like your initial people that you grow up with. So it is a little bit on the easier side to just be
Yeah.
completely yourself.
Just to be your crazy self. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So, my next question is, what are some blocks that may be stopping someone from being their true selves or being true to themselves?
I mean, there's a lot of fears and self-doubts that come into this. Fear of rejection. There's the fear of disappointing others and believing you are not good enough as yourself. These are all things that completely block you from being your true self. And it's really interesting because we can say from like a prehistoric kind of point of view of it was really important at one stage for us to be able to socially fit in so we could literally survive in the group. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not relevant anymore. We don't need to fit in to literally survive because society has come on so far. But we still have this need to fit in and need to be accepted. And I mean, this can even go into trauma, into childhood, and
Mm-hmm.
learning that you were not good enough as a child, or disappointing somebody as a child, you bring that through you into adulthood. You are doing everything you can to not disappoint that person. And that then spreads around, and you're trying not to disappoint anybody. And suddenly you're this person that you think is going to please everybody else. And yeah, I think it's really about, what fears do you hold? Are you fearing being rejected by somebody? Are you fearing disappointing somebody? Are you holding that belief that actually you as a person are not worthy and you are not good enough? And really looking at your own individual blocks as to what is keeping you from being your true self.
I do think of almost shedding parts of yourself that
Yeah.
may be even inhibiting that
Mhm.
that energy to kind of flow. I feel like when you are your authentic self, there is a certain type of energy that you emit, right?
100%. And it's really interesting you bring this up, because I see it online all the time in businesses. There was a stage at the end of the last year that I think it was like around September, October time. I started working with a new coach, and I was like, right, this is how I want to show up. This is the kind of content I want to be creating. And as soon as I made that shift and started showing up as myself, because I'm a perfectionist, massive, massive perfectionist, work in progress always, but this was allowing me before to show up in such a constructed way. And I thought I had to be like super professional and coming across exactly how I wanted it to in my mind. I wasn't being me. And so when I started working with this new coach, I was like, right, no, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be showing up like this. I want to be creating content like this. And I started to, and oh my goodness, the amount of people who messaged me being like, I love your vibe, I love your content, you're so funny. And the more I was showing up as myself, the more people were messaging and being like, oh my God, I want to connect with you. So being my
Yes.
actual self was attracting more people, because I think you can tell on camera when somebody's being authentic or when somebody's holding back. And
Mm-hmm.
when somebody's being their most authentic self, that is when they become most attractive, in the sense of you want to get to know that person,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you don't. Maybe you realize, okay, that person isn't for me, and that's also an incredible, amazing thing. Being this perfectly created person online or real life, you are creating relationships that aren't actually authentic relationships, because that isn't you. They're not getting to know you, they're getting to know the version you think that they want you to be.
Mm. Mind blown.
My-
Literally, I just had to like sit with that for a second. OMG, that is just, I can't even tell you how many times I struggled with this a lot in high
Mhm.
school,
Mhm.
playing the part, trying to just not be an outsider. I think I didn't want to be seen as different or quote unquote weird or strange, because I was just, my personality was really out there, out of the ordinary. And I definitely held myself back, but I think I'm learning to just let that go, especially when I'm making friends now. And
Mhm.
that's how I find like my true soul sisters and my
Yeah,
real
exactly.
tribe. And I honestly think that even though we're like miles apart, I honestly feel like I've found another
Oh my
soul
God, we have
sister.
so much in common. It's actually kind of weird. Like, yeah, I completely agree. Even though we're miles away, like we have such a, I think, a genuine, strong connection, because we've just been our complete, authentic selves, and it's attracted to each other.
Mhm.
But I completely understand not being yourself at school, and I also kind of think school's a bit of a brutal time. Like,
Yeah.
mean. I think a lot of people probably felt that way in school, and I think that's really, really sad that people were pointed out for being different at school. And I think it's mad, isn't it? Because you're in America and I'm in the UK, and that's still something that is the same. It was so important to. It's funny, isn't it? Even down to like what you wear, you have to wear the same things to fit in
Yes.
and be
Yes.
part of that like social group and be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So it's crazy, isn't it? But then growing up as an adult, it's like you have to unlearn everything to fully accept you and love yourself as you are and just be that crazy authentic person that you should be because you are worthy to be that person by just being you. Yeah.
Absolutely. I do feel like I'm kind of going back to those times where maybe like you did feel a bit rejected. You did try to be yourself, but then that kind of started the patterns of blocking that off because you maybe were not seen as accepted at one
Yeah,
point in your life.
100%. Yeah.
Mhm.
So for me, when I dropped out of university, that was when I was like, okay, I'm listening to myself. I'm going to start making decisions for myself and creating a path that is slightly different to the norm of everybody else. And this was responded to quite differently by many people. So I had my partner who was incredibly supportive, like my partner at the time, he was incredibly supportive and he was like, you've got to do whatever makes you happy. My friends didn't quite get it. So they were like, but what are you going to do? And then there was family members who were like, you're a failure. You're a disappointment. What are you going to do now? You have to have a degree to be successful. I had all these kind of negative opinions around me, which, as somebody who grew up as a people pleaser and trying to please everybody, that hit me hard. That was like, I am a failure. That is it. That's what I am. That took a lot of undoing in therapy. Not gonna lie to you,
Oh.
you know. But
Mhm.
that's when I learned, A, it's okay to fail, like completely. That is how you were gonna learn. And
Mhm.
B, that if I didn't make that decision, I wouldn't be where I am today. Like I wouldn't be doing something I absolutely love, learning a degree that I absolutely love, taking that moment of having to disappoint others to
Mhm.
please myself. It's selfish in the best way. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
this is the thing about disappointment and disappointing other people is they're only disappointed because of their own expectations they put on you. It's nothing to do with you. It's nothing to do with you, your decisions, your choices. It's a them thing, right? It's
Mm.
what choices and decisions have they made for you that they're expecting from you? Why are they disappointed in a choice you've made that isn't even related to them? What are they projecting onto you? So
Yeah.
the fear of disappointing someone was a big thing for me at one stage in my life, but that experience taught me actually the worst person I could disappoint is myself. And I have to
Mm.
make choices and decisions that feel completely right for me. And you know what? Dropping out of university is still my absolute favorite decision I've ever made. I've never regretted a decision when I've listened to myself, ever.
Yes, yes. It almost reminds me like, what does success mean to you? And not taking on someone else's definition of it.
Yes.
And because when you really define that for yourself, then that leads to your own happiness, your own fulfillment
Mm-hmm.
is what fulfilling to you, because what may be
Exactly.
fulfilling to you may be different for somebody else. And then
Exactly.
also what I think of is your quote unquote failures aren't really failures at all because you're learning something. Something came
Exactly.
out of that quote unquote mistake,
Yeah.
right?
I don't believe in failure at all. I don't believe in mistakes, right? So how can something be a failure if you've learned from it? How can that be a fail? Right? If you've learned from
Mhm.
it, then it's just a life lesson. There's no such thing as failing if you were going to take something from it. And there's always something to take from it. Always. I don't really believe in regret because if you've made a decision and it didn't work out, then you've learned something. Just be at peace with the decisions you've made if they are for yourself. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, how can we start showing up completely and fully, as you say in your program, your coaching
Yeah.
program, ourselves?
Okay. So I think this starts with connecting with yourself, right?
Mhm.
I think once you have these fears, these self doubts, you're pleasing other people, you're so detached from who actually are you. Even the things of what do you enjoy for you? What do you want to do? What are your strengths? What are your values? I think it's really important to know who you are, accept it, and be confident in that person. And It's a process. It takes time. And I think so start to get to know yourself. Like I said, the strengths, the weaknesses, try things that you've always wanted to try. So when I dropped out of university, I started doing all sorts of different things. So I became an intern for an online magazine. So I was writing online magazine articles about travel.
Wow.
I did an interior design diploma. So I was like, I'm into interior design. Let's try it. I didn't pursue any of these things, but I learned something from each and every one of them about myself. And I learned that I was a super creative person and I missed being creative. But dropping out of university, I learned actually I miss learning. I love learning new things all the time. So I learned so many different things about myself. And I think that's so important. Like, you have time. There's this social idea of you have to do this by this age and this by this age and this. No, you have time and you can take as long as you want to explore things, try things, learn about yourself, you know, literally date yourself, get to know yourself, take yourself out on fun dates, take yourself out, do a class that you've always wanted to do, take a course you've always wanted to do, like learn about yourself. And that is one of the most just amazing things you could ever do. And I don't think enough people want to learn about themselves. And what hobbies do you do? What do you do for fun? Like that's a question that scares people. It scares me. I'm like, oh no, I don't do anything. I forget about everything I have done and have tried and what that's taught me as a person. I think even, you know, how do you work best? Even like in your morning routine, what is going to set you up for the day that makes you feel amazing? It doesn't have to be like this super long, like that girl morning routine. Like it can be the simple thing that makes you feel good in the morning, and that's a perfect morning routine. Once you've learned about yourself, that's when we can start setting boundaries with other people, you know. That's when we can start working through your fears and your self-doubts. Once you truly know yourself and what you love to do, you know your limits and you can set that, and you can sit and ask yourself the deeper questions of actually what freaking scares me. Why do I feel like I need to please people all the time? Or why do I feel like I have to be a perfectionist all the time? And that's when we can then start moving through those deeper questions. And like I say, it's a process. All of it is a process. We change all the time. So I don't think it's a job that will ever be complete and done.
Yes,
um,
yes.
it's always ongoing. You should always, if you have a relationship with a partner, that will always take work. Relationships aren't easy, and you as people will change over the years, and you will continuously be learning about each other. So why is it any different
Yes.
with ourselves? You know?
Oh my gosh. Wait, you should put in half to get
Mm-hmm.
100%. But with
Yeah.
yourself, it should be 100
Yeah.
because you're the only person in the relationship. And I also love what you said about going on dates and getting to know yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because that is how I think you really begin to align yourself with your true self once you start
Yeah.
uncovering those deeper questions. Who am I really?
Yeah.
What do I honestly love? What are my
Mm-hmm.
strengths? What are some of my things that I may need to improve on? I feel like our true selves are our whole selves, right? So even those parts of ourselves that we perceive as flaws or the shadow sides of ourselves, we kind of have to learn to get to know that side as well so that we can
100%.
begin to heal those parts.
100%. I think even to a degree, learning about that side of you is even more important than the lighter side. How can you be light if you've still got all this darkness? But you have to know your darkness to know your light. And I think a lot of people, that is the part that scares people, you know, especially if they're coming from a childhood of trauma. A lot of people avoid, right? They tend to go into avoidance. And this can look like working a lot. Workaholics are usually avoiding something, right? So this can look like so many different things, but they don't want to sit with themselves for a minute. That terrifies them because they don't know what thoughts are going to come into their head, and they don't know that they don't want to get to know the darker side of them because it's scary. And it don't get me wrong, it is scary, and healing is a really painful process, but it's one of the best processes you could ever put yourself through, because at the end of it, the result is so much better than living that life of fear and their life of hurt and pain. Some people completely repress their emotions. So I've got a lot of people in my life who are struggling, and it's coming out in so many different ways. And it makes me feel very grateful that I let myself go through the work, because I know how hard it is and I know why people don't want to do it, but it's also why it's so important to be able to sit with yourself, even if it's just for a few minutes, and think, okay, how am I feeling? What am I thinking? And I love to take myself on a date. I love to sit in my own company and sit in a coffee shop and read, or do a little bit of shopping by myself. And I love that. I love my own company, but that terrifies some people. And why are you so scared to sit with yourself? Why? I think it's almost quite sad. Like, you don't want to have a relationship with yourself.
How much of your time are you spending with other people, and how much of your time are you actually just spending alone?
Yeah.
And I think right now for me at this point, I need to definitely, I'm spending so much alone time since I'm working from home.
Yes.
I need that connection. That's what
Yeah.
I'm missing. I think it's
Yeah.
really finding a balance between those two.
100%. It's a balance, that whether you're introvert or extrovert, there is a balance needed between alone time and connection with other people. 100% agree.
I want to dive into, what would you tell a woman who doesn't feel safe to
Mhm.
be themselves?
Yeah, this is a hard one, because there could be so many different reasons why they don't feel safe. And I sit here and say, it's learn about yourself and go into these fears and self-doubts and that darker side of you, but that might not be safe for some people, right? That can be a very dangerous territory. I'm aware of that, and I'm very grateful that I can explore that side of myself in a safe environment, in a safe way, but a lot of people can't. And sometimes it's their own head that isn't the safe place, right? So I would want to ask them, like, why do you not feel safe? And I mean this in a way that I'm excluding very obvious physical unsafe situations. So why do you feel unsafe? Who are you trying to please? Who are you trying to not be yourself for? And or what or why? I think it's really looking into this question as, why do you not feel safe? Is this something you are carrying with you? And I think this should always be done in a physically safe environment around them, or have something with you that makes you feel safe. Or one of the best tips I've ever received is, like, just going out of your comfort zone anyway. Make sure you have something in your week that grounds you. Make sure you have something in your week that makes you feel safe. It might be having a bath, that might be what makes you feel safe. It could be a pair of fluffy socks that you can hold with you that makes you feel safe. Do something that makes you feel safe while exploring this, or grounds you while exploring this. I think a lot of self-development books, they encourage you to go into the deeper side and deeper side and deeper side. And it's actually, okay, but we need to acknowledge that this needs to be done safely and in a controlled way, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And I even say, if you feel like you need extra support, maybe seek out a therapist or a coach who can
100%.
provide that safe space.
Yes, 100%. Reach out to friends, reach out to family if you can, and discuss. If this is like deeper, if this is mental health, then always seek support from the people closest to you. But nobody's going to be able to support you like a healthcare professional. And I think this is the dangerous side of being a mindset coach, is that, or even a coach in general. I think mindset comes into so many different things in coaching, but it's learning that, okay, I have to deal with people's fears and people's self-doubts, and that may involve looking at past trauma, but I'm not a professional. I'm not a healthcare professional. I'm studying psychology and counseling, but I ain't qualified. If you are feeling that way, if you're having those deeper, darker thoughts, then you should seek help. People live with these thoughts for years, and this is the thing. If it was a physical health problem, they'd go to a doctor. But health problem, people shy away from it. They keep it to themselves. And no, always see a professional. Always go see somebody who's qualified. See a therapist. Best thing you will ever do, I promise.
I agree. I have my therapist. I just got a new one because my old one is moving to Florida. And
Oh, okay, yeah.
I haven't actually gone to in-person therapy sessions yet, but we she has a stable and there's horses there. So we do groundwork. We're going to eventually do that. So I'll get
Amazing.
to like be with the horses and all of that and their energy. So I
Yeah.
cannot wait to just be near horses because I absolutely love them.
That's actually amazing. And yeah, like I'm very open about the fact I used to see a counselor because I want it to be normalized. I want it to be an okay thing to do, right? And
Mm-hmm.
when I first started seeing a counselor, a lot of people were like, "Oh, what's wrong with you to need a counselor?" And I'm like, whoa, well, I'm probably the healthiest person in the room right now because I've
Right.
done all this work. I was very, very lucky that the very first counselor I went to was amazing and we just connected and we got each other. But, it's also okay to go and see a few therapists and see who is the best fit for you. It's not just the first person's going to be the exact right one for you. Again, it's a relationship, a therapeutic relationship. So it needs to be the right one for you. And I think a lot of people give up on therapy quite quickly because
Mm-hmm.
one counselor wasn't the fit for them. But yeah,
I think it's just that negative stigma that is around therapy.
yeah,
Like, oh, are people going to think I'm a loony or crazy or just unstable, completely unstable? So,
a negative connotation with mental health. And it is
mm,
associated with these. It is sadly the more harder mental health issues like schizophrenia and borderline personality disorder. And it's usually because they're associated with being violent. And actually, that's not really the case at all, but that's how people associate it. And that's
mhm.
why they have such a stigma. But you can honestly go to therapy for anything. It can be loss, and that doesn't even have to be death. That can be a breakup. You could change jobs and the change is a little bit much for you. You can go to therapy for that. You can go to therapy to adjust to change. And
Mhm.
um, there are so many different reasons you can go to therapy, and each and every time it's fine. Like you're not going to be judged for going to therapy by your therapist. If you need to go and talk through an issue you need to understand in your head, go, that's fine. It doesn't have to be I'm mentally ill and really, really struggling to see a counselor. Not at all. If you are struggling to even figure yourself out and find out what's going on for you or make a decision, you can go to a counselor and they will work through that with you. And
Mhm.
I think that's an amazing thing. I think everybody should go to therapy. Everybody has unhealed trauma. Everybody does. That's my opinion.
I would love to dive into perfectionism. So,
Mhm.
is there a cure and how do we move away from this?
If I find one, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
No. Okay, so to move away from perfectionism, I think we really have to look at the root of it, and
Mm,
that can be different things for different people. It can be learning your worth is attached to your achievements. It can be, again, back to disappointing others. On a deeper level with trauma, it can be from parents withholding their love when you're a child and you're
mhm.
trying to earn it essentially. Once we know the root of the perfectionism itself, we can start to like rewrite those stories and work through that, because it's easy to do the surface level things of like, and I think these are still great, don't get me wrong, like if you film a story on Instagram, keep it, whether it's perfect or not, post it. And these can be
Mhm.
great practices to try and do. I would write a page out, and if it wasn't neat enough, I'd rip it out and do it again. It's about leaving that page as work,
Wow. Yeah.
um,
You're taking that white out. I gotta redo this word.
yeah, exactly. But to heal it, we have to go deeper. We have to look at, okay, why? Why do I feel like I have to be perfect? Because it does stem back into, okay, why do I not feel good enough? And why do I have to try to feel good enough externally by doing all these things amazingly? So it's really about, okay, how can I stop striving for perfection? How can I learn that I am good enough and that I am worthy? How can I stop trying to please others to get my validation? If you do want immediate thoughts and immediate tasks, like it is the little things that you practice daily. And the best thing to remember, that done is better than perfect. I don't know about you, but I tend to like
Yes.
do something and it will take me ages until it's perfect, and then by the time it's done, like the moment's passed and I'm like, right, well, I'm just not going to bother. If you plan to get something on Instagram, just do it and get it up. It doesn't matter whether it's perfect enough or not. And the best thing about social media is that everything moves so quickly, nobody's even going to notice or remember. I think that's in life. People are moving so quickly now, and people are so, we're all very self-absorbed. Like we are. You could be the most selfless person, but your world is still revolving around you. And nobody's actually looking at you long enough to notice or care whether you are perfect or not. So it's completely back to you, and how can you make yourself feel good enough without trying to reach everybody else's what you think are high expectations, So
Yeah.
yeah.
Because I feel like if you are striving for perfection, like when are you actually going to submit the
Oh,
book
100%.
proposal or say that your videos for your program is complete? Because
Mhm.
you're never going to feel like it's complete if you're like, oh no, I could have said this or I could have said that or
Exactly. Like there is no such thing as perfection. No such thing. Like it doesn't exist. So how can you reach something that doesn't even exist? So it's about learning that level of what is actually good enough, and it's
yeah.
usually nowhere near these stupidly high expectations that we actually do put on ourselves. So yeah, it's just learning. I think it's back to that relationship with yourself, learning that you are good enough, learning that you are worthy just by being you. You don't have to reach these high expectations to be deemed worthy and good enough.
Ah, because then I feel like it's that thinking when I reach that, then I will be happy. But if you're not happy now,
Yes, exactly. Like the amount of times I've done this and I'm like, right, well, if I have the perfect matching set of this, then everything will be perfect and everything will be great. But of course, nothing actually changes because it's just a thing, right? Or, you know, when I've when I've reached so many followers, then I'll be happy. When I've reached so much monthly income, then I'll be happy. But you reach that point and then the barrier just shifts again, and
mm-hmm.
it's never actually allowing yourself to be happy in that moment and with what you've achieved and what you've done, because it's not ever going to be good enough for yourself. It's so important to look back on how much we have achieved, how much we actually have done, and sit in that moment of, oh my god, I did it and I've done this and this is amazing and I'm amazing and everything's incredible. And
Yes.
yeah, it's going back to that idea of happiness. What is it? I think it's always going to be debated, to be honest, but I think it's about being present in the moment, really being happy with what you've achieved in that moment, and
Mm-hmm.
being present in the moment. It's taken me a long time. I've lived in the future for so long of when I've had this, then I'll be happy. And you will never create your dream reality. You will never create that reality for yourself because it will always be in the future. So you're not
Yeah.
allowing yourself that reality now. So you're always going to be unhappy
Mm.
in your reality because you're choosing to be, which is really sad. And it's something that I did for so long. Like I've realized actually there are so many aspects of my dream reality that are in my reality now. And I can
Mm-hmm.
be grateful for that, and then that's how we
Yes.
can start moving into that reality.
And I feel like too, I read this book one time where it's almost like a little analogy of coming from perfectionism. If
Mhm.
it's like you're going and climbing a mountain, and like once you finally climb that mountain, you're like, oh boy, there's all these other mountains that I can try to
Yeah,
climb, and it just keeps going.
it's like a cycle, and it's weird because it's almost deemed as a good thing. Like, oh, you're a perfectionist, that's really good, that means you are really caring about what you do and the effort you put in. And actually no, perfectionism is debilitating. It
Mm-hmm.
stops us showing up as ourselves, it stops us doing things we want to do, it stops us from just taking action and actually reaching what we want to reach. So
Yeah.
I was brought up being like, oh, you're a perfectionist, that's a good thing, it means you care and you want to take so much pride in your work. And while I do, actually perfectionism's been one of the biggest barriers I've had to face. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it does just come back to of how can you learn that you are worthy and you are good enough as you are with what you produce, and it doesn't have to be this incredibly groundbreaking thing. And that's actually really interesting I say that, because before I came on this podcast, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to say something that's incredibly groundbreaking and I can't make any mistakes in what I say in case it's picked up on, or like
Wow.
what?
Yeah.
And now I'm here and I'm like, well, it doesn't even matter, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm
Right.
like, you know, just say what you want to say. So
Yes.
yeah, perfectionism, I think something I could possibly be facing for a while. Like I say, self-development is always ongoing. So
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness is the first
Yes.
step.
Yes, absolutely. And I honestly get those feelings too of like, oh my gosh, am I saying the right things? Even the host. So don't feel
Yeah.
like you're alone in that. Now, moving on to anxiety. So, when someone feels like they are just so anxious and all of their
Mhm.
worries and fears is just literally weighing them down from being
Yeah.
who they truly are. So, what would you tell someone to try to break those
Mhm.
worries and fears away so that they can finally start to step into the person that they were meant to become?
So I have a very long history with anxiety. So I was officially diagnosed when I was 18, but I was suffering for about 10 years before that. Um,
Hmm.
a lot of very physical symptoms as well, rather than just the mental. I think almost like the physical symptoms are worse than the mental symptoms. I know that's weird, but
Wow.
yeah, like I think that was what drove me to go to a doctor, because I was suffering from so many actual physical symptoms that I was like, I can't do
Hmm.
this. I can't live like
Yeah.
this. But yeah, so anxiety is when our nervous system is disrupted and we're basically constantly in fight or flight mode.
Hmm.
And this, like I said, can trigger a lot of physical symptoms, that like knot in your stomach constantly. Your whole body just feels tense all the time. Like I would wake up aching because I was just tense. And,
Wow.
there's so many different ways it can actually manifest. But it's really interesting because looking back, I almost can't figure out how I'm able to manage it now. I think because I'm so used to the way I do manage it now, and it's
Hmm.
a lot easier to manage now. I think it goes back to, okay, how can we ground ourselves? How can we keep ourselves feeling safe? And I think
Hmm.
for me, doing yoga and meditation can really help me feel more grounded in myself and more relaxed in myself physically. And then while feeling grounded, being able to ground ourselves, it's how can I push myself a little bit every day to be that person and do those things. So I think as
Hmm.
a teenager, like there was things I had to do that really massively pushed me out my comfort zone, that caused me to go. I had really bad social anxiety. I wouldn't talk to anyone. I wouldn't even pay for anything at the counter. Like I'd send my little brother up to pay for me because I didn't want to talk to anyone. So,
Hmm.
but having to get a part-time job at 16, like that massively pushed me to have to talk to people every single day. And while that was something I had to do, it still pushed me. But there are things that I don't have to do that I still push
Hmm.
myself to do every single day. And these things get easier over time and the anxiety lessens because we feel much more comfortable doing it. So
Hmm.
um, when I first started my Instagram account for my business, oh my God, I didn't want to message anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. That terrified me. And now I start new conversations every single day because I forced myself to talk to people. I forced myself to send that voice note to someone. I forced myself to connect with people. And now it feels so normal and
Hmm.
easy, a year later. But I think with anxiety and being you, start baby steps, even if that's what feels most easiest for you, because it's not going to ever feel easy trying to move past these fears and self-doubts, especially if you are terrified of rejection, terrified to disappoint other people. Like, oh my God, your anxiety can go through the roof. Like, let me tell you. But it's how can I take action daily, even tiny little things, so they become easier over time. And then I can push my comfort zone a little bit more. And there is something, I can't remember where I've read this, but there is a limit to how much we can push ourselves out of our comfort zone. It's like the optimum is like slightly out the comfort zone, but not so far out that it
Oh.
feels completely overwhelming and too much. So
Mm.
even if it's something like just starting an Instagram account, if that terrifies you, then just start it. You don't have to post anything, you don't have to message anybody just yet, but just starting that account can be the first step. And then,
Mm-hmm.
okay, then I can post something. And then, okay, I can start a conversation, and slowly it will build up and it will get easier. And the more you push yourself to do these things, the easier it gets to push yourself to do things.
Yes, I even think of just my journey of starting a YouTube channel or starting a
Yes.
podcast. It
Yes.
terrified me starting
Yeah.
those things,
Mhm.
but here I am, and I have almost 100 videos on YouTube now, and now
Amazing.
I'm on my in my 30th episodes on podcasts. So I just kept showing up, and it
Mhm.
became a lot easier, and I felt like I was kind of in the shadows a little bit. I didn't want to show my true self online and on
Yeah.
YouTube and in the podcast world, but now I feel like it is easier for me to show my authentic voice and myself through video and through an audio as well. So I feel like it's become easier, but it's just taken that practice, like you said.
It's literally like confidence is all about starting before you feel ready. Like you can't start feeling confident at something before you've started it, So
Mm-hmm.
it's just taking the action, taking the practice, and that's what's going to build your confidence. And at the same time, I think it is really important to remember, okay, I still need to feel safe, I still need to feel grounded at some point, and that's what's going to balance that anxiety. Otherwise you will feel completely unbalanced and dysregulated and just like, oh, it's just too much. So like keep yourself
Mm-hmm.
balanced, keep yourself grounded, but still push yourself that little bit. And that's how you are going to build the confidence through anxiety. And yeah, and it does happen, like you can like move past it, because where I was 10 years ago is a completely different place. I never thought I would start an Instagram account. I never thought I'd be talking to people. That just sounds like so crazy. I never thought I would talk to anybody, ever. So 10 years later, and like I'm talking to different people every single day. That's just mind blowing to my 12-year-old self. So
Yes, and here you are, I guess, as on
I
a podcast
know.
show. So,
Exactly. Like I think even a year ago, like this would have been too much for me. So it's
wow.
crazy how much just pushing yourself that little bit can do. And I think a massive thing as well is having the right support around you. If you've got the right network
Mhm.
around you, it's going to be amazing. If you connect with the most amazing, genuine people, it's going to make everything so much easier. And having people who understand you, because if you're wanting to go into a different path and being your authentic self, some people won't get it. And this is where judgment and rejection can come in, because they don't understand it. That's basically what judgment is. They don't understand what you're doing. And
Yeah.
that's okay. If they want to learn about it and they want to understand you, great. If they don't, fine. That's their choice. And it should never stop you from being your true self, because just because they didn't understand what you're doing. There's going to be a whole bunch of people out there who are your group, who completely understand what you're doing and who you are. And that's what's going to light you up. So
So, how can we find the courage to be ourselves and let go of fear?
looking at the actual fear itself, what is it you are actually fearing? Is it disappointing others? Is it rejection? Is it fear of failure? What are you actually fearing? And taking that action and taking the small steps to being yourself. And
Mhm.
you will find rewards along the way. Like when I decided I wanted to show up on Instagram, I wanted to be my full self, not holding back. That's when people started messaging me and being like, oh my God, I love your vibe. You're so funny. I was rewarded for being myself because
Mhm.
people liked it. And, but it wasn't that was important. It was the fact I was enjoying showing up as myself. I was having more fun showing up as myself. And that was what was validating to me, more so than the amazing messages that I got from other people. It's
Yeah.
exhausting being someone that you think everybody else wants and not being yourself. And
Mhm.
it is way more fun showing up as yourself, doing what you want to do and how you want to do it, even if it's like completely off the beaten track and nobody understands it. It is so much more fun than doing something you don't want to
Yes.
do because that's what people expect. So, yeah. Like, look at what are you fearing, and working through that fear, and realizing that actually a lot of the time the fears aren't as bad as we imagine them to be. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think my biggest fear ever was disappointing my parents, and then it happened. And actually everything's worked out okay in the end for me. I mean, my parents, the relationship's a little bit fractured, but I've learned so much along the way of, if they don't understand it, that's their choice and that's okay. And that's okay with me because I'm doing something I absolutely love, helping other people and living a life and creating a life for myself that is amazing. And that's what's important to me. At the end of the day, on your deathbed, it's like you could spend your whole life pleasing other people, but when you look back on your life, what are you going to be happy with? What are you going to be proud of? And that is doing what you want to do and doing things that light you up. And it's not easy. This is not being yourself in this like Instagram perfect creative world is not easy, like at all. But
Mm-hmm.
it is understanding the fear and then taking those small practice steps of moving towards yourself. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I would love to know, where can listeners connect with you, Ellie?
So they can connect with me on Instagram. My name is Elle_Maple. I'm hoping later in the year there may be a few other different ways, but for now it's just on
Oh,
Instagram.
yes, give her a follow. I have a signature question that I ask all of my guests at the end of the show. It is, what does it mean to blissfully bloom?
I think this means to be able to come into yourself, being fully you in a way that just feels incredible to you, being authentic to you, your values, and yeah, just being at peace with yourself and who you become and who you're going to be in the future. Like just being at peace with you. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank
Thank
you for
you
coming on the show today, Ellie. It was
for
so much
having me.
fun.
Yeah, I've loved it. It was so much fun.
Thank you. Maybe we'll do a part two one day.
Yes, that would be amazing.